Hey everybody, welcome back to BobkeTV time once again for the Broom Wagon. Got a huge show this week, lots of racing to get to. The good, the bad, and the ugly from all of that. And of course, Neutral Zone news, the music musings, and tweet of the week. Rather delightful tweet of the week, if I do say so myself. All of that coming up on the Broom Wagon. Okay, everybody, let's get right into the racing. Paris-Camembert. Did that race a few times in my career, had a pretty significant hopping off incident. But this year won by Lilian Calmejean from the Direct Energy squad. If you remember Lilian Calmejean from last year's Tour de France, a very dramatic stage win in the Tour, cramping. Had to get off his bike, was able to hold off the charging field, but no such drama for Calmejean in Paris-Camembert, and he gets his 10th win as a professional. Watch for the Direct Energy team to have a very good season and be competitive throughout. More stage wins in their future in the Tour de France, I'm most certain. The Brabantse Pijl, or Flèche Brabançonne in French, if you like, is a very tough one-day semi-classic from Belgium, and I did not race that during my career, but it features a lot of the climbs that we see later on in the Ardennes week of racing, including Amstel Gold, Flèche Wallonne, and Liège-Bastogne-Liège. More on those races coming up, especially Amstel Gold in this edition. But the men, it was won by Tim Wellens. Tim Wellens is on a great season. He won the Ruta del Sol. He won a stage in Mallorca to open up the season very early, way back in February, I believe. Won the points classification at Paris-Nice and wins Brabantse Pijl. So Tim Wellens announcing himself in great shape for the Ardennes. Didn't work out at Amstel, but he did get a win in Brabantse Pijl. And third was Tiesj Benoot, his teammate, also on great form. I've been, throughout the year, commenting on how well Lotto Soudal has raced, and they're continuing to do that. So Tiesj Benoot, winner of Strade Bianche, comes in third. So Lotto Soudal, in spite of the injuries to André Greipel, still getting great results from their other riders. The women's edition was won by Marta Bastianelli, who also won Ghent-Wevelgem a little bit earlier in the year. And Marta is on very good form this year. She beat Marianne Vos, who finished third. Marianne Vos won everything in her career. And Leah Kirchman, Canadian rider on the Sunweb squad, was second. So brand new addition in the Brabantse Pijl for the women, and taken out by Marta Bastianelli. So congratulations. Tour of Finistère in the local parlance, was won by another Direct Energy rider, Jonathan Yver. He got a stage win in Paris-Nice earlier, overcoming a couple of riders, one of whom we're going to talk about, not in the Hall of Fame, in the Shack of Shame, in the music musings. So stay tuned for that. Tour of Finistère, significant for our purposes because stage number 5 of the Tour de France is going to feature a very similar finale to what the riders encountered in the Tour of Finistère. Second was Romain Bardet, and 8th was TJ Van Garderen. TJ Van Garderen having a very good ride, and they were sprinting for the win with Jonathan Yver. Not sure you could call a sprint with mostly very competent climbers a sprint for the win, but Jonathan Yver overcoming his rivals to win that. One thing's notable about that, the consensus amongst the finishers up in the front group of the Tour of Finistère was that it will probably be a pretty big group contesting the finale, and riders like Peter Sagan, Greg Van Avermaet, and Julian Alaphilippe, according to the pros who had just finished it, will be the competitive riders a little bit later in the summer in that stage number 5 of the Tour de France to Quimper. So stay tuned for that. And if you're curious during the tour, you can look back on BobkeTV for the highlights of the Tour Finistère, won by Jonathan Yver. And don't be surprised if Yver is up there with a chance for the win on stage number 5 in the Tour de France. It just sort of happens like that. All right, let's move on to the Amstel Gold Race. Let's start with the women. Chantal Blaak, current world champion, taking the win in front of Lucinda Brand and Amanda Spratt. Brilliant tactical race by Chantal Blaak. Followed the wheels, came to the finish with her rivals, and clearly dusted them in the sprint. So, you know, Chantal Blaak in last year's World Championships only got the rainbow stripes. It seemed pretty obvious that she followed the team tactics and had the strongest team, Annemiek van Vleuten, Anna van der Breggen, and Marianne Vos, and who obviously were not going to chase her in the finale. But I have a feeling that that was a pretty powerful physical accomplishment as well as tactical one in last year's World Championships. So watch for Chantal to continue winning big races against the very best. The men's race taken out by Michael Valgren. I had him on my radar because a couple of years ago, in a very similar situation, he had dusted the field, but couldn't quite get rid of Enrico Gasparotto, who overcame him in the sprint. So Michael was second just in 2016, and he's been having a storming spring. That should have been proof enough for me that he would have been one of the pre-race favorites. But Michael Valgren, I mean, he demolished the field, basically. He was the strongest rider in the race. The tactics played out in his favor from the chasers. He had his teammate Jakob Fuglsang monitoring the chase, but in spite of that, I think it was just a really impressive physical overpowering of the field. Roman Kreuziger second and Gasparotto third. Peter Sagan, very impressive in fourth place. When Michael attacked the group, Peter hesitated a little bit. Maybe he didn't have the legs at the moment to go with him. Maybe he thought that the others would chase a powerful attack like that from Valgren, but be that as it may, Sagan won the field sprint for fourth, so a very impressive spring for Peter Sagan. Got two big wins, Ghent-Wevelgem and of course Paris-Roubaix, to the delight of cycling fans everywhere, myself included. Not just because I picked him, but because his talents lend themselves to that race. And Amstel Gold Race is probably within his capabilities in the future also. But a great spring for Peter Sagan, and it'll be a joy to watch him in the Amgen Tour of California coming up in just a few weeks. Special credit going to Lawson Craddock. Got ninth in Amstel. That is huge. It's awesome. And he was in the breakaway, the last man standing from the breakaway. So Lawson able to hang in there when Van Avermaet caught him, when Valverde caught him, when Michael Valgren caught him, when Peter Sagan caught up to him. So a brilliant ride by Lawson Craddock in the Amstel Gold Race. And it was great to see him mixing it with the very best in the Amstel Gold Race. And it's a good race for Lawson. It would have been interesting to see if he got a chance to race the finale and had some help from his teammates to keep him in position throughout the day. And maybe that's in the future for Lawson Craddock. So Amstel Gold Race is a race I love. It is very, very tough. 35 climbs. They come at you just relentlessly. And the battle for position is something you have to really experience. You have to really live that to know exactly what it feels like. But through the wonders of TV, we get a chance to do that. So I hope everybody got a chance to follow it. I subscribed to some cycling feeds. Even so, it was very hit and miss. I was able to patch together, however, the full Amstel Gold Race pretty seriously in throughout the day on Sunday. So it's great when everybody comes together for a big race, and we have way more of that to come in the season. Tour of the Alps also transpiring. Stage number 1 taken out by Pello Bilbao. And Luis Leon Sanchez, his teammate, was second. So that's Astana winning Amstel. And the next day, Tour of the Alps. Pretty good couple of days for the Astana squad. All of that to the good in racing so far. The bad, Michael Matthews, first day he's felt good since an injury earlier in the year and had a flat tire at the worst possible moment during the Amstel Gold Race. And if I'm not mistaken, I explained a similar situation that happened to me in the Tour of Flanders during my career. And when the peloton is splitting apart on these narrow roads, or any bike race, let's be honest, and there's groups of riders in various stages of disarray, and even if you're in the front group and you get a flat tire, unless there's a teammate there that can either change the wheel or give you his bike immediately, you have to wait, not just for the whole peloton to go by you, but your team car to be able to get around all of those drop groups. And sometimes it can take forever and knock you out of contention. That's exactly what happened to Michael Matthews in the Amstel Gold Race. So bad news for Michael. He got a flat tire at the worst possible moment. The good news, he's feeling a lot stronger and is on the start list for Flèche Wallonne. So best of luck to Michael Matthews. Not sure who this Astana rider is, but his chain is just bouncing all over the place. If you had to pedal at that moment, you can imagine it getting completely wadded up and being much more dangerous, maybe even causing the rear wheel to lock up. Presumably got it back in good working order and carried on. And the Froome dog attacking, not able to get away, which usually when Chris Froome goes to the front on a climb and attacks, it is lights out, but not quite as sharp as we've seen him at this time of the season in years past. The Giro is still a couple of weeks away, and of course the Tour de France is plenty of time to get fit for Chris Froome by the Tour, but I was surprised to see him attack and not be able to get away. Usually if he doesn't feel like he can get away, he doesn't attack, so maybe he's just warming up the motor. But we're going to get into the drama that's continuing to unfold in the Musette Musings with Chris Froome. Here's some, could have been really ugly. A horse gets out on the course and starts running alongside the peloton. It happens once in a while. A professional peloton coming down a small road you can imagine be absolutely terrifying to any, I wouldn't say person, but any animal that doesn't know exactly what's coming at them. And I've seen it numerous times where horses get spooked, find their way out to the road where the riders are coming, and can cause havoc in my career. And it's funny to go back so far and have similar incidences still continuing to plague professional cycling. In the old Colorado Classic, the Coors Classic, Tour of Colorado, 3 horses got out. I think there's a photo, maybe even some video coverage of this, and were in the middle of the peloton for miles. It was insane. And it was, I mean, it's crazy. You're riding along and there's a horse, like, and the horses were in various stages of exhaustion as they tried to stay in the peloton, but it actually split the field. And the riders at the front were never seen again before the finish. So I believe the finish was McClure Pass that day. And the stage turned out to be, I want to say, 42 miles longer than it was supposed to be for the peloton. So it's funny the things you remember when you're reminded of them. All right, everybody. Next up is the Neutral Zone News. Okay, on the Neutral Zone News, it's George Bennett almost getting annihilated by a car out before the Tour de Alps, previewing the time trial course from the Giro that starts May the 4th, May the 5th, but soon. And car doesn't see him, turns left right in front of him, and then George Bennett is airborne. Tears the bike rack, the roof rack, right off the car, and comes away with just some scrapes and bruises to his knees. And I believe he was warming up it was before the stage in the tour of the Alps, and he was active in the finale. So that could have been horrific. So knock on wood, that will be the end of George Bennett's bad luck for the season, and he'll be at his very best in the Giro d'Italia. Danilo De Luca in the headlines, and his contention continues to be, if he had not doped, he would not have won. And in his way of thinking at the time, for himself, for his livelihood, for his sponsors, for the fans, he had to dope in order to be competitive. And so where that leaves the sport, I mean, we're talking about 10 years ago on average, when he was at his best. Let's hope, even though some of the headlines would not necessarily suggest that, the majority of the peloton is racing clean, and I believe that is the case, and that the hope has always been that it's a level playing field, and you don't need to dope to be successful. And I believe that most of the peloton is clean. You will always have, no matter what the rules are, no matter what the penalties are, no matter what the rewards are, you will always have a certain percentage of cyclists that will cheat no matter what, and a certain percentage that won't cheat no matter what. And to make a level playing field for everybody is the goal of the sport. And the UCI, in my estimation, still has some ways to go to guarantee that that happens. And the full cooperation of the race organizers is also essential for that goal. That's horrible publicity for the races, so they're very incentivized to provide people with an authentic spectacle and the belief that the riders are racing bread and water, pan e agua, and I do believe the majority is doing that. Danilo De Luca, he had a number of controversial interviews in the past. He's come back a little bit from his initial lifetime ban pronouncements, from saying that he believed everyone was still doping. All the successful cyclists were still doping, and faced a huge backlash. So he wasn't quoted in the same level of criticism of the sport. So best of luck to Danilo De Luca in his future endeavors. And there may be a time when he can embrace the current generation of cyclists. And no, he doesn't really mention his feelings about the current cleanliness of the professional peloton. So we'll leave it at that until his next interview with the Italian journalist. All right, next up, the Musette Musings. Okay, on the new Musette Musings, Nacer Bouhanni being pulverized by Cedric Vasseur, the new team manager at Cofidis, for bad form, lack of leadership, inability to win races. And I have to agree with Cedric Vasseur. And Cedric Vasseur saying he wouldn't currently enter Nacer Bouhanni in a Gran Fondo, a Sportif. And I would say some of the Gran Fondos out there are very, very tough. So that's not a good example for Cedric Vasseur to use. But be that as it may, Nacer Bouhanni is having a horrible season so far. And it'll be interesting to see how he responds to the criticism of the team manager, whether that fires him up or whether he rides even worse. And that will be, moving forward for the Cofidis squad, an important relationship to see how that evolves. For me, the negative motivation did not work. And I always race better with positive feedback, with criticism when it was warranted, but in a way that made me encouraged to train harder, be more serious about dieting, rest, and more aggressive in the racing. But we'll see how Bouhanni responds to that. Some bad news, the bad old days of the EPO that plagued cycling for a generation has come back in the form of Remy DiGregorio on the Delco Marseille squad. Interestingly, he's third on a stage, very difficult stage, won by Jonathan Yver, if I'm not mistaken, and was positive for EPO in Paris-Nice just recently. And DiGregorio has run afoul of the anti-doping, at least the spirit of the anti-doping movement in the past. So what his penalty for this infraction will be, it could be quite extensive and probably precipitate the end of his career. Warren Barguil breaking the code of silence, which you don't often see, so hats off to Warren Barguil, saying that DiGregorio should face criminal charges because this is illegal in France. And I have to agree with Warren Barguil. I don't know what the penalties should be or what they are in France, what the exact extent of what the legal community could use against Remy DiGregorio. But I most certainly think that DiGregorio should be eligible to face criminal charges. So Warren Barguil, good luck, dude. That's not easy to do in professional cycling, to say something like that. And in the past, riders that have done so have been very, very severely criticized amongst their peers. So it's nice to see that that is no longer something riders have to worry about as much as they did in the past. David Leparchant, the president of the UCI, has also come forward in an extensive interview with French journalists and has said that the Chris Froome case will not be adjudicated before the Giro d'Italia, which is very disturbing to me. Leparchant went on to say he's worried about a backlash that Chris Froome might face in the Giro, most certainly in the Tour, and said that in the races so far he hasn't seen a lot of that. And as I imagine, it's about the worst case scenario that the UCI and Chris Froome and Team Sky will not have figured this out by now. And we'll get to a little bit more of this, more of the details in Chris Froome's recent statements before the Tour of the Alps. So stay tuned for that in a minute. Amateur dopers plaguing North America still. Barry Miller, amateur racer from the United States, positive for drugs, and has been able to argue successfully with a reduced ban that it was from a supplement, a tainted supplement that he took. He engaged the services of, according to him, I'll quote, the sport world's top lawyer. I'm not sure if you want that title, but Howard Jacobs, who in the past has defended Maria Sharapova, Bobby Leah, Marion Jones, and Floyd Landis. So, and now Barry Miller is also in that long list of illustrious clients of Howard Jacobs. He also states that he provided USADA with the supplements he was taking, and claims that USADA's own analysis of those products were what resulted in his positive for banned substance. My problem is Barry Miller does not identify who the manufacturer, who the maker of the tainted supplement is. And as a public service to other athletes that might inadvertently do the same, I think that it's essential that Barry Miller tells us who the maker is. And he promises to pursue legal action against them, and is unable to name the maker because of that ongoing legal brouhaha. But I find I find it difficult to believe. Not impossible, and please go to the comments section, let me know. Barry Miller, tainted supplement, is that possible? Or a long litany? And here's his letter. Or if you're curious, you can go and find his letter to the general public. He also asked for privacy in a very different way. It's a pretty long, eloquent letter asking for privacy, but that's a different story. Tainted supplement, or just a convenient excuse used many hundreds of times before in cycling, let's be honest. On the other hand, Dylan Lima, just, okay, whatever, I'm guilty. And rather than do 4 years, his ban is been reduced to 3 years for a very similar scenario. Very similar, if I understand the wording correctly, analysis of what he's positive for. And in my estimation, I would like to commend Dylan Lima for saying, yes, I'm guilty, I'm going to do my time, and I will come back, and it's going to be 3 years, so that's not that long, honestly. Come back at the appropriate time. So what do you guys prefer? The Barry Miller convo, which is reminiscent of many, or the Dylan Lima? I'm guilty, apologize, I'm doing my time, and we'll come back when it's appropriate. You guys let me know what you think. Chris Froome, also in the Musette Musings. The saga that keeps on giving. Chris Froome quoted before the Tour of the Alps. This was meant to have been confidential. So the transparency we were promised is still out of the question by Chris Froome and Team Sky. But this is what is maybe most distressing. Chris Froome quoted as saying before the Tour of the Alps, "We are working as quickly as we can within the UCI guidelines to reach a resolution for this." David Leparchant, for his part, also said in his interview that I referred to a moment ago, that Chris Froome is in an untenable position and is unsure how the French public will react, and thought it would be resolved by now. But why hasn't it been? So somebody, if both parties are saying they are working as hard as they can for an expeditious resolution, one of them is lying. One is not telling us the truth why this has taken so long. As I said before, Chris Froome will be starting the Giro without a decision having been made. And both sides arguing that they're working, but that cannot be true. So please, if anybody's out there that can help understand why this is taking so long, my estimation is that Chris Froome and his legal team have provided so many injunctions that the UCI has had to, through their lawyers, answer all of those. And we'll see what the outcome is. I have maintained all along that Chris Froome should not be racing during this procedure. I think it's an insult to the clean riders. I'm sure that the riders who need salbutamol to maintain their asthma symptoms, the vast majority never exceed 1,000 nanograms per milliliter, let alone have twice as much. And the riders who have been penalized in the past. And to me, it's as simple as that. So I just can't, for the life of me, understand why Chris Froome is still racing and is going to start the Giro. So if we move forward to the Tour de France and it's still ongoing, that's going to be a real problem. That's my prediction. That that saga continues to grind on, and I'm sure it's going to be, the longer they wait to get this done, the more catastrophic whatever the outcome is. And let's hope, fingers crossed, it gets done before the Tour de France. But you know what? At this point, it would not surprise me if it hadn't. Let me ask a question real quick. If it's not adjudicated by the Tour, should Chris Froome race in the Tour? That's my question. Patrick Lefevre, Quick Step manager, too many motos. They are changing the outcome of the races. They've got 25 wins this year. So not sure which motor she's talking about. Maybe just not for his riders, but everybody else gets the benefit from the motors. But it is a problem, so Patrick Lefevre has a point there. All right. Tweet of the week. Let's go to Olivier Legac from the FDJ squad. Got a little pig in the recent Tro-Bro-Léon. Tough race up in the Northwest. And first, Breton finisher. Take a close look at the expression on the little pig's face. Why is he being given this in the shower? Or just before or after the shower? But let's hope that there's a bright future for Olivier Legac and the little couchon in the photograph. All right, everybody, that's it. That's it from an extensive broom wagon. Got Flèche Wallonne, got Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and plenty of racing to come. And of course, the Salbutamol Froome Sky saga continues to grind on. I'm sure we'll be following that too in the weeks to come. Thanks for watching, everybody. Until next time.